You ever have one of those mornings where the world is so quiet, so thick with snow that you almost think time itself froze? Well, let me tell you about the day I learned just how heavy silence can get, especially when it's packed 6 feet high against your front door by people who'd rather see you trapped than admit you have rights they can't touch. I moved to the ridge above Gallatin County, Montana 4 years back. Clay Merritt. Yeah, that's me. 53 ex-Army logistics, spent half my life making sure convoys got through the kind of whiteouts that eat weaker men whole. I came out here for peace, routine, and for June, my 16-year-old daughter who's got asthma bad enough to make a cold snap feel like Russian roulette. Out here, elevation means more than just a good view. It's life or death in winter. Our house sits about 300 feet above the fancy new HOA neighborhood down in the basin. We're the only legal way in or out for emergency vehicles when the snow gets deep, thanks to an old easement registered back in '87. Saved lives during the blizzard of '98. Lately, though, the folks running the HOA, especially their president Karen Dandridge, acted like it never existed. Now, I'm not the type to pick a fight over nothing. A couple days before the snow wall appeared, their plow guy cut too far onto my land, tore up my firewood berm, left ruts in the drainage slope I'd just spent weeks grading. So I did what any decent neighbor would: walk the line, took photos, sent them off with a polite note. Hey, tell your driver to stay south of marker 12.3, would you? No threats, no drama. Just keep your snow on your side. Next morning, I wake up to a barricade of ice and snow packed tight as concrete, 6 feet tall, right up against my front door. Not fallen snow, push snow. Tread tracks still fresh, arcing right from their loop onto my easement. The message couldn't have been clearer: stay in your lane or we'll box you in. See, what they didn't know was I had cameras, I had maps, and I'd spent decades thinking about terrain the way most folks think about recipes or baseball stats. So I spent that day digging a side trench, working the back where the snow hadn't curled so tight. June stayed inside, wrapped up pellet stove, running oxygen at the ready. By sundown, I'd cut a new exit path, marked it with orange flags, set up perimeter cameras, infrared motion triggered, every angle covered. Didn't take long for them to escalate. That evening, their plow comes back not to clear, but to pile more snow into my fire break path areas they had no business even touching. Caught it all on video. Check the law. In Montana, snow trespass is real if someone dumps snow on your land and blocks access. Especially if you've got a vulnerable person in the house, you've got grounds for a civil complaint. So I filed the report, labeled it Property Snow Obstruction Phase 1. Next, who shows up but Karen herself? 50-something coat lined with fur clipboard like a badge of office. Didn't apologize, didn't even look me in the eye, just rattled off violations, visual obstructions, snow piles exceeding aesthetic limits, unauthorized markers, those orange flags meant to keep us alive. She smiled when I told her what her plow had done. That's when I knew this wasn't about snow, this was about control. I spent the night reviewing footage, replaying the angles, the timing, the precision with which that snow was dumped. Not sloppy, not random, tactical, designed to choke me off without ever crossing the invisible line that would get them sued, at least not unless you knew how to prove intent. But see, logistics is my game. I chart escalation, I build response matrices, I know when someone's playing defense and when they're playing offense. I started digging. Their plow contractor, Frostline Services LLC, was brand new, triple the budget of the last guys. Funny thing, turns out Frostline is run by Karen's nephew. Bid out the local company, padded the invoices, kicked back the profits. The HOA's snow budget had ballooned to $142,000. For what? For less coverage and more trouble. The math didn't lie. Mara Jameson, a former board member who'd quit after her husband died, handed over old contractor bids, showing just how cheap and clean things used to be. She let slip the real reason Frostline got the gig: family ties. And that was just the start. Through FOIA requests and a bit of legwork, I pieced together how the HOA had forged map overlays, erased my emergency easement from their official maps, filed bogus liens against my property, even though my house was built before the HOA existed and I'd never signed a covenant. Pure paper grab annexation by bureaucracy. I documented everything, every violation, every fake notice, every dollar that vanished into shell companies. Tom Becker, a retired Army engineer down the street, had the original development maps that showed my parcel was never meant to be part of the HOA's jurisdiction. He helped me cross-check the boundaries. And when the next storm hit, the kind you hear about on the news, the kind that kills people who don't respect it, the HOA was ready to try and bury me for good. Only this time I was ready too. I called in favors from old Forest Service buddies, deployed a drone with thermal optics to monitor our roof and the locked emergency gate. When June's asthma flared, I realized time was running out. My backdoor trench was nearly closed by wind-packed snow. The main exit was still blocked, and now a frost-lined truck was parked behind the padlocked gate engine, hot on thermal, just watching. I strapped on my backup snow rig, cut through the forgotten fire trail behind our lot, a route I'd mapped years before and kept clear in case the worst ever came. 30 brutal minutes later, the rescue crews had a way in. They saved June's life. That should have been the end of it. But the HOA filed another complaint blaming me for interfering with snow operations. Tried to make me the villain for saving my own kid. That was my breaking point, not rage, just cold, clear focus. I took all the evidence, every map, every video, every faked invoice, and sent it to the county fraud unit, state AG, local press, and half the residents. Exposed their fake preservation zones used to scare off rescue crews, their money laundering, their obstruction of emergency services. The county issued an injunction. Frostline's accounts were frozen, the HOA's operations suspended. A court-appointed trustee took over. Then came the blizzard of the decade. Power-out backup batteries failing the cul-de-sac below iced shut. The same artificial snow barriers they'd built to keep me out now turned the lower streets into a death trap. Karen's house. Buried. Mara's front door frozen solid. For hours, people pounded on walls, flashed SOS from windows, realized too late just how little the board had cared for anyone's safety but their own. My live drone feed went viral. County crews used my old fire trail, the one I'd kept clear, the one they tried to erase, to evacuate 23 residents. No deaths, but 3 hospitalized. The aftermath was chaos. News vans lined the ridge. State auditors dug through boxes of phony invoices and fraudulent maps. Karen sat alone in a county hearing room, stripped of her title, forced to admit under oath that she'd engineered it all for power, for profit, for the sheer pleasure of wielding control. In the end, the board was dissolved. HOA assets seized, contractors indicted, new rules written in the books to make sure no HOA could ever again erase an emergency access route or bury someone in the name of aesthetics. My trench, once a line in the snow, became a permanent county-protected lane marked bold green on every new map. The old power structure gone. What's left is just a handful of neighbors who remember what it felt like to be buried and dug out, who bring over cider and jam and sometimes an apology. And you know, I didn't walk away from all that with a smug sense of justice or some hunger for payback. What I felt, what I still feel on the coldest mornings when the ridge is quiet and the light glances off the new emergency sign June and I put up together, was relief. Relief that the truth weighed more than the lies, and that sometimes the only way to lift the weight is to dig together. That's what this whole mess taught me. You think you're digging for your own survival, but when the snow comes down, every trench is connected. So let me ask you, where's the line between protecting your rights and protecting your community? When does holding your ground turn into digging everyone else's grave? And what do you do when those with power forget the whole point was to keep people safe, not just keep them in line? If you've ever tangled with an HOA or seen power twisted for someone else's gain, I'd love to hear your story. What does justice look like to you? When did you know it was time to stand up, dig in, and let the truth come out? Drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. Because as sure as winter follows fall, the next storm is always coming. The only question is, will we be ready to face it together?